Americans may not agree on much, but we agree on Social Security. We all pay in. It ought to be there when we need it. Social Security could face a funding gap in less than a decade, and I don't want to see a pay cut. I'm with AARP in the fight to protect the Social Security we earned.
Pledge to protect Social Security at aarp.org/weearnedit. That's aarp.org/weearnedit. Paid for by AARP.
Welcome to the program. No Victocrats allowed because we've got a country to save. So let's get her teed up!
You want to play what? Say hello to my little friend.
What the hell's going on out here?
Ooh, that's a bingo.
You can't succeed without teeth.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel. Iran launched attacks today on Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan after the U.S. military retaliated against Iran for the downing of the American attack helicopter. President Trump says Iran has taken too long to negotiate a deal, and, quote, now they will have to pay the price, end of quote. Stephen A. Smith blames Trump for the Knicks losing the game against the San Antonio Spurs at Madison Square Garden. Smith said that Trump disrupted the Knicks' mojo. Now, I'm no expert, but I saw the game, and it seemed to me that the mojo of the San Antonio Spurs and their superstar Wemby might have had a little something to do with it. About the murder conviction of black Texas teen Karmelo Anthony, Jasmine Crockett says Anthony was justified in using deadly force, that the knife used to kill white teen Austin Metcalf was not even a deadly weapon, and she believes that race played a major role in the conviction of Karmelo Anthony. Democrats are standing by Graham Plattner. Now, for 10 years, Democrats have accused President Trump of being a Nazi, and now they're backing a man with a Nazi tattoo on his chest. You cannot make this up. Is California a lost cause? Can Steve Hilton win? All of this and more, 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Dissent, of course, is welcome. We have our Mark line open 24/7. We have our Super Racide line open 24/7. Haven't heard from Super in a few days, Maestro, have we? Don't know why that is. I refer to Mr. McConnell, my engineer, as the Maestro. Now, I want to start with this trial in Texas. There is, as was the case regarding the death of George Floyd, zero evidence that race had anything whatever to do with this case. None. As you know, we had 4 months of protests in the summer of 2020. Billions of dollars in secured and unsecured property damage. 25 people killed, 2,000 police officers wounded. Millions of people, hundreds of different cities and towns had protests, demonstrations, and in some cases violent demonstrations, because of an assumption that what happened between George Floyd and Officer Derek Chauvin had to do with race when there was zero evidence of it. As I mentioned before many times, the lead prosecutor happened to be black. In his opening statement, took pains to say that the Minneapolis PD in general was not on trial. Officers have difficult decisions to make, he said, in a split second. He said this individual officer is on trial for what he did or for what he didn't do to George Floyd. I've told you about Police Mag website. They asked people who self-described as very liberal. I suspect, I don't know, the millions of people that were in the streets protesting in the summer of 2020, probably if you asked them to describe their ideology, they would have said that they were very liberal. Don't you think? Police Mag asked people who self-described as very liberal, how many unarmed black men did the police kill in 2019? 50% of the self-described very liberal people thought the police killed 1,000 unarmed black men in 2019. 8% of the self-described very liberal people thought the police killed 10,000. What about people who just describe themselves as liberal? Well, according to policemag.com, 39% of the self-described liberals thought the police killed 1,000 unarmed black men in 2019, and 5% thought they killed 10,000. Now, according to the Washington Post database not Fox News, not Newsmax, Washington Post database, the number was 12. 12. Yet very likely the people in the streets summer of 2020 thought that the death of George Floyd was one of 1,000 that took place that year. And of course, unarmed does not mean not dangerous. Michael Brown, for example, Ferguson, they found his DNA on the officer's gun, meaning he was trying to get the gun. He was unarmed in the sense of not having a weapon, but he was trying to get one. My point is, race is often injected where there's zero evidence that it played a role. In this case, neither the defense nor the prosecution said race had anything to do with the encounter. The defense argued self-defense. But neither the defense nor the prosecution argued that race had anything to do with this case. So why then are we talking about it? Because people are criticizing the trial because there were no black jurors on the jury. Apparently there were 3 that were rejected for cause because all 3 of them said they didn't want to send a black person to jail. I think one of them said, I don't want to send a brother to jail. So, of course, the prosecution objected for cause, meaning it doesn't detract from the so-called preemptory challenges. You get a certain number of, depending upon the jurisdiction, number of challenges for whatever reason you want. Don't have to give a reason. I just want Joe Schmo off. But you have unlimited challenges for cause. So if people say, I'm not going to convict no matter the evidence, that is a prime reason to reject somebody for cause. And apparently 3 jurors were rejected for cause who were black. There were 3 others, apparently, who were black, who were educators. Now, why would you oppose the seating of a black educator? Because the prosecution very likely assumed that the educators would have a disproportionate amount of influence over the jurors because they come from education. In any case, there were no blacks on the jury. So that's one of the reasons for the controversy. And I said this yesterday. In Washington, D.C., particularly years ago when the city was even higher percentage of blacks than it is right now, it was not uncommon for a white criminal defendant to be judged by an all-black jury. Years ago, Oliver North was convicted of lying to Congress by an all-black jury. And when he appealed his conviction, and he gave a number of reasons for why he thought the conviction should be overturned, he never used as a reason that I did not have a jury of my peers because there were no whites on the jury. He never even made that argument. So it is not uncommon for there to be a jury of a different race of the defendant. The question is whether or not those jurors can look at the law and the facts and render a verdict. Now, the facts pretty much are, in my opinion, pretty clear. This is a high school track meet. It was raining, apparently, and each team had their own tent, although the team of Karmelo Anthony did not have a tent. Don't know why, but did not have a tent. So Anthony went to this team's tent. He was asked to leave several times, refused to leave, said something to the effect of, "Make me." And apparently either the victim or the victim's twin brother put hands on Karmelo Anthony. By put hands, I mean a shove. Some of the witnesses describe it somewhat differently, but that's pretty much what it was described. Karmelo Anthony produces a knife from his backpack, plunges it into the heart of Austin Metcalf. Metcalf dies. Karmelo Anthony, by the way, ran away, later on turned himself in and admitted that he had done it. There's no question about him having done it. The question is whether or not there was a legitimate reason to argue this was self-defense. The jury took about 3 hours, which is a pretty short period of time, and it concluded that he was guilty of first-degree murder. Jasmine Crockett says if you reverse the race of the parties involved, the outcome would have been different. If Metcalf had been black and Karmelo Anthony white, different verdict. No evidence of that whatsoever. Now, here's something that should make you angry. Data brokers don't just sell your address and your phone number. They sell your beliefs, your political views, your religious affiliation, your charitable giving, your family structure, all of it packaged up and sold to political operatives, activist organizations, and corporations who want to target you because of what you believe and how you live. In America, a person's faith and family should be your own business. Incogni fights back. Incogni sends legal removal requests to hundreds of data broker companies on your behalf. And they stay with it because these companies keep trying to put your information back. It's an online service I'm now using and benefiting from. Go to incogni.com/Larry. Use my name, Larry, as your promo code. Get 60% off. Your values are not their data point, they're yours. Incogni.com/Larry for 60% off. INCOGNI.com/Larry. Parents, the biggest question in education today is how artificial intelligence is shaping the way your student learns. Artificial intelligence is changing education faster than most schools are willing to admit, and many families are rightly concerned. At Patrick Henry College, the goal isn't to outsource thinking to machines. It's to train students to think for themselves. PHC emphasizes a Christian liberal arts education that develops reasoning, writing, speaking, and discernment skills no algorithm can replace. Students learn to engage technology wisely, understanding its capabilities, but also its danger and limitations, rather than becoming dependent on it. In a world increasingly shaped by AI, Patrick Henry College prepares students to lead with wisdom, conviction, and moral clarity. If you want a college that prepares your child to lead in an AI-driven world without losing his or her faith and values, I encourage you to learn more about Patrick Henry College. Visit phc.edu/elder. That's phc.edu/elder. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel. We're going to get to Iran and get to California in a few minutes. Have you noticed something about this case of Karmelo Anthony found guilty of first-degree murder? Jasmine Crockett claims the race had to do with his being convicted, and if Karmelo Anthony were white, he would not have been convicted. Notice that, to my knowledge, could be wrong, let me know if I'm wrong, 888-971-7243, I know you will. Neither Barack, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon Obama, nor Al, no justice, no peace, Sharpton, has said anything publicly about this case. Al Sharpton certainly isn't reluctant to whip out the race card. And you know why? They both know the facts and the law clearly point to guilt. Now, they're not going to say it because they don't want to get on the wrong side of Jasmine Crockett. Number 47.
Was it a switch? I don't know what he had.
It was like it seemed like it was a multi-tool, almost like a Swiss Army.
Like with like with the little scissors and everything and whatever. So it was small. Mm-hmm. Well, I would argue the size of it alone, you wouldn't even think it's a deadly weapon.
And
I forgot he had it in the bag.
If it was one of the little, like, I don't know. Like, I do think.
Well, that's why he went to his coach and was like, but I don't think I heard him that.
Can you imagine? Switch this around. White kid plunges whatever this was in the chest of a black teenager. Black teenager dies. And then some pundit says, well, I'm not even sure it was a knife. I mean, I'm not even sure it was a deadly weapon. What do you think Jasmine Crockett would be saying? Number 48.
Black women, especially black women who have black male children, live in fear and agony every single day. A fear and agony that I promise you, the Metcalfs probably never spent a day living that way. And we're going to have just some real conversations about race in this country.
Isn't this disgusting? Let me tell you something. Black women, especially those who have black children, live in fear. Live in fear of whom? I'll tell you who they live in fear of. Other young blacks. According to the Centers for Disease Control, depending upon the age demographic, depending upon the year, a young black man is anywhere from 10 to 12 times more likely to be murdered than a young white man, same age demo. And they're not being murdered by whites. They're being murdered by other young black men. I've talked about this for years. This disgusting Jasmine Crockett makes this comment. The number one cause of preventable death for a young white male: accidents, like car accidents, drug overdoses, drownings. Number one cause of preventable death for a young black man is homicide. Homicide. Almost always at the hands of another young black man. How are you advancing anything by making this assertion she just made? Black women live in fear. Fear of white people. Nearly 50% of the homicides in America are committed by blacks. Almost all black men, almost all young black men. Whites, while 60% of the country, commit a lower percentage in terms of their percentage of population of homicides. And when you really get down to it, you're talking about just a handful of counties where these homicides take place. And in some cases, just a handful of blocks, often gang-related. It's a big, fat lie what she just said. Number 22.
If a 300-pound man is beating me, like on top of me and beating me down, I'm not limited to fist. You know, I would argue that even the only time we go into things like people's hands being considered deadly weapons is typically like if they're a professional boxer or that kind of stuff. But I think by the time you start getting to like football player, good argument. Good freaking argument. We're not talking about like the golfers. We're talking about football players, right? Like this is what they are trained to do, is to inflict like serious physical contact. And it's my understanding that the decedent was that.
What is she talking about? What beat down? Asked to leave. Anthony allegedly said something like, "Make me, touch me and see what happens," while reaching into his backpack. There was pushing or grabbing, unclear exactly what. He pulls out a knife, stabs Metcalf, the white teen, once in the chest, kills him. The jury rejected the self-defense claim and didn't opt, by the way, for the lesser charge of manslaughter. Since then, the prosecution says that they will consider allowing this to be lowered to second degree. But Jasmine Crockett simply suggests that Karmelo Anthony was being beat down by a 300-pound man. No evidence of it whatsoever. Just says it. And once again, this is another so-called black leader, Jasmine Crockett, using her platform about BS. Have you heard her say anything about the fact that 85% of black 8th grade or 13-year-old kids are neither reading nor math proficient? Has she said anything at all about what I just said, about what the Center for Disease Control said, about the rate at which a young black man is murdered compared to the rate at which a young white male is murdered? Has she said one word about that? Has she said one word about the dismal education? kids are getting, K through 12. She went, by the way, to a private school. Has she said anything at all about that? And again, don't you think it's strange that even the biggest race hustler in America, Al Sharpton, has not said one word about this case? Maybe, just maybe, it's because the facts and the law suggest that Karmelo Anthony is in fact guilty. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. Do not leave town.
35 years for a kid who had decided to go under a tent that was not his team's tent as it was raining, and simply didn't want to be put out in the rain by some random kid that he didn't know who was larger than him. Listen, a lot of people don't know what it is to live as a black person in this country, but just like you can give the benefit of the doubt to so many police officers when they go out and they shoot some black unarmed person, even though they are trained, the fact that there was little to no mercy seen or humanity seen when this black boy said that I was scared, or the fact...
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. Salem News Channel coming to you from the Relief Factor studio. Don't forget your Relief Factor, 800-4RELIEF, 800 the number 4RELIEF. ReliefFactor.com, that's ReliefFactor.com. You heard her assertion, and she suggested that the police were using deadly force against black people just because they're black. It's a big fat lie. Are there certain instances in which the cops fail to follow the law? Of course there are. But they are rare. And they should be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. The idea that cops are systemically using deadly force against black people just because they're black is a big fat lie. I've told you about the economist named Roland Fryer, happens to be black. He's the youngest tenured professor in the history of Harvard, and Harvard is the oldest college in America. That's how smart this guy is. From the inner city in Baltimore. And he did a study because he assumed that the police were in fact using deadly force against blacks just because they were black. And he said the findings were the most shocking of his professional career. Found out that the police were not in fact using deadly force against blacks just because they were black. He got rid of that whole group of researchers, hired another group of researchers who came up with the same conclusion. And here's what happened. Number 51.
I collected a lot of data. We collected millions of observations on everyday use of force that wasn't lethal. We collected thousands of observations on lethal force. And it was in this moment, in 2016, that I realized people lose their minds when they don't like the result. And so what my paper showed, you'll see tomorrow, like some of you, was that, yes, we saw some bias in the low-level uses of force, every day pushing up against cars and things like that. People seem to like that result. But we didn't find any racial bias in police shootings. Now, that was really surprising to me because I expected to see it. The little-known fact is I had 8 full-time RAs that it took to do this over nearly a year. When I found this surprising result, I hired 8 fresh ones and redid it to make sure. They came up with the same exact answer, and I thought it was robust. And I went to go give it, and my God, all hell broke loose. It was a 104-page dense academic economics paper with a 150-page appendix, okay? It was posted for 4 minutes when I got my first email. This is full of shit. Doesn't make any sense. And I wrote back, how'd you read it that fast? That's amazing. You are a genius. And I had colleagues take me to the side and say, don't publish this. You'll ruin your career. I said, what are you talking about? I said, what's wrong with it? Do you believe the first part? Yes. Do you believe the second part? Well, the issue is they just don't fit together. we like the first one, but you should publish the second one another time. I said, let me ask this. If the second part about the police shootings, this is a literal conversation. I said to them, if the second part showed bias, do you think I should publish it then? And they said, yeah, then it would make sense. And I said, I guarantee you I'll publish it. We'll see what happens. So it was, you know, I lived under police protection for about 30 or 40 days. I had a 7-day-old daughter at the time. I remember going and shopping for it because, you know, when you have a newborn, you think you have enough diapers. You don't. So I was going to the grocery store to get diapers with an armed guard. It was crazy. It was really, truly crazy.
Didn't want to hear the truth, and he got death threats because it torpedoed the narrative that people like Al Sharpton, Karmelo, Jasmine Crockett put out. For 250 years, Americans have believed in one powerful idea, that we were meant to live free. Free to work hard, free to move, free to enjoy life without being held back. But if everyday aches and pains are slowing you down, it might be time to declare your independence from pain. My friend and colleague Raj has knee issues. I hooked him up with Relief Factor. He said this is working, takes it every day. Relief Factor is 100% drug-free. It's a research-based formula designed to help your body fight inflammation, one of the root causes of pain. It's not a quick fix or a temporary mask. It works from the inside out, at the source. Relief Factor was created so people could get back to living life on their terms, walking, working, exercising, and enjoying the moments that really matter. This year, as we celebrate 250 years of American independence, take a stand for your own freedom. We're offering a special patriotic price, just $17.76. Your $17.76 is waiting for you. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, 800-4-RELIEF, 800 the number 4 relief.
If a 300-pound man is beating me, like on top of me and beating me down, I'm not limited to fist. You know, I would argue that even the only time we go into things like people's hands being considered deadly weapons is typically like if they're a professional boxer or that kind of stuff. But I think by the time you start getting to like football player, good argument. Good freaking argument. We're not talking about like the golfers. We're talking about football players, right? Like this is what they are trained to do, is to inflict like serious physical contact. And it's my understanding that the decedent was that.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel. We're going to talk about California coming up. Also about President Trump saying that he's run out of patience with Iran. Larry Elder, Salem News Channel. By the way, the decedent, the victim, Austin Metcalf, was 6 feet and 200 pounds, not 300 pounds, unless he gained 100 pounds since he was stabbed to death. And Karmelo Anthony was 5'11", 162 pounds. Neil is in the Bronx. Neil, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing great, Neil. Long time no hear from.
I know, my brother. You know what? I'm going to tell you like this. Jasmine Crockett needs to shut her mouth. Because you know what? I'm going to tell you like this. Here in the city, in New York, when I was young, I used to fight people in the street, right? It was a one-on-one fight. It was no knife. We didn't put a knife on nobody. This young man took a knife to fight a man who was unarmed. He's a coward. His father just told better than that. You don't stab people and get 35 years for murder. I'm telling you, Larry, the truth is this. See, they don't understand. When you got a fight to go to, one-on-one, anybody put a weapon on you is a punk. You was deal with the concept. I fought people in the Bronx, in Brooklyn. I got my butt whooped. I didn't put no knife on them. I don't put no gun on them. That's a bad move, Larry. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you this. He should go to jail for the rest of his life. He committed murder. He does Black Lives Matter. Look, every life matters. It don't just black life. God gave us all life. It ain't down with just colored people. This is pathetic.
It is pathetic. It is pathetic, Neil. Neil, as always, thank you very much for calling. A couple of things. If you were a prosecutor and someone like Jasmine Crockett is in the jury pool and you're conducting voir dire to determine who sits on the jury, would you put her on the jury? Would you put somebody who thinks like that on the jury? And then when they get kicked off, what do? They cry racism. You're not thinking clearly. You're not thinking fairly. You're saying it's a Swiss Army knife, 5-inch blade. You're accusing the victim of weighing 300 pounds and weighing 200 pounds. And of beating Karmelo Anthony when there was no beating. Why would you want somebody like that on the jury? Rosalie is in Berkeley. Rosalie, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for letting me speak this bit of information I have. I listen to other conservative talk shows. I've listened to you for years. I probably shouldn't mention the person's name, but he's very conservative, and he got kicked off of his regular radio channel, and so now he's on Rumble. So I just really need your opinion on this. He was talking today about how there is a war on white men, and kind of like not so much white women, but white men in particular, and that especially after this verdict in Texas, do you feel like there can be he was mentioning instances where, a person of color might be in like a quiet restaurant and start like playing their music on their phone super loud, trying to get like a reaction from somebody so they could have a violent confrontation with them. And I have young white male kids, and do you see any kind of like sort of universal retaliations for this? Because I kind of think everybody thought he would get off because he was black.
Well, Rosalie, I understand why this man, whose name you didn't mention, made his comment. But do I believe there's going to be some sort of race war as a result of this verdict? No, I don't. But I do believe there's a problem. Most homicides are same-race homicides. We've talked about this for a very long time. But there are, every year, about 750 black-white or white-black homicides. 500 whites are killed, even though blacks are just 13% of the population. 250 blacks are killed by whites, even though they're 60% of the population. So when there is a black-white, white-black homicide, it's far more likely to be a white victim and black perp than the other way around. There is an anger on the part of a lot of young black men, pushed by people like Jasmine Crockett and race hustlers like Al Sharpton, telling them they're victims, telling them that racism remains a major problem in America. And so if you're fed a diet of that, you're pulled over by a white cop, it's not unreasonable to have an attitude. You're fed this diet, you have a verbal encounter with a white person, it's not unreasonable for you to assume that the white person is saying something to you because of the color of your skin when you're being told by so-called black leaders. Evidence be damned. This is what people like Jasmine Crockett are doing to this country. And Barack Obama did it too. If I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. The Cambridge police acted stupidly. Racism is in America's DNA. Embrace Black Lives Matter. Now, whether you're preparing for exams, juggling family and career, or just looking to stay sharp as you age, Think Factor is here to help. created by the same company that makes Relief Factor. Think Factor supports sharper focus, stronger recall, and clearer thinking. It's a natural way to give your brain the daily nutrients it needs for memory, attention, and even vibrant vision. I take Think Factor every single morning. Helps me stay sharp, helps me engage in show prep, busy days, and retain the information that I have in my brain. And Think Factor results get better the longer it's taken. If you want to stay focused during demanding tasks, keep your memory strong, and maintain mental energy for whatever's ahead, Think Factor is for you. Call 800-4-RELIEF. That's 800-4-RELIEF. Your first bottle is just $19.95. Or visit ReliefFactor.com. That's ReliefFactor.com. 800-4-RELIEF. 800 the number 4-RELIEF. ReliefFactor.com. ReliefFactor.com.
That ain't no lie.
888-971-SHGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel. Coming up, can California be saved? Is it possible that Steve Hilton can become the next governor of this state? We're going to talk about that next hour. Getting back to the trial and conviction of Karmelo Anthony, a few more things. Jasmine Crockett implied that blacks were being persecuted by whites, and I mentioned the stats on black-white, white-black homicide. What about black-white, white-black non-homicide? Attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, rape. Recent years, roughly about 500,000 such actions between blacks and whites. Non-homicide violent crime. About 500,000. In 85 to 90% of the cases, it involves a white victim and a black perp. Only 10 to 15% the other way around. So if you want to play this game about one race being persecuted by the other, whites have a much stronger argument than do blacks. It isn't even close. Again, roughly 500 to 600,000 non-homicide violent acts of crime between blacks and whites in recent years, on average. 85 to 90%. It's a black perp, white victim. Only 10% the other way around. And this nonsense, these lies are being pushed by so-called black leaders, one of whom is a former Attorney General Eric Holder, who, when he was Attorney General, talked about, quote, pernicious racism, end of quote, his expression, not mine. And he said black criminal defendants get longer sentences for the same crime committed by white criminal defendants. And he cited the U.S. Sentencing Commission. And he's not wrong. Anywhere from 12 to 20% longer sentence. But the very same U.S. Sentencing Commission said the reason for this is the average black criminal defendant has more convictions than the average white criminal defendant, which judges, of course, take into consideration when they determine the sentencing. Black judges give black criminal defendants longer sentences. Yet here he is saying this publicly, giving people, particularly young black men, the impression that they are being victimized by a racist criminal justice system when it isn't true. At one time it was true, but it's not now. And how many states have black attorneys general, black prosecutors? It's just a big, fat lie. And it's not helping anybody. Why work hard? Why defer gratification? When, after all, the man's going to get you anyway. Disgusting. So let's get her teed up!
You want to play rock? Say hello to my little friend!
What the hell's going on out here?
Ooh, that's a bingo.
You can't succeed without teeth.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel. We're going to get into whether Steve Hilton could become governor of California and California in general in just a few minutes. But first, let me play you this news clip describing a crime, and you tell me what you notice about it. Number 32.
It started with an argument about someone yelling too loudly on his phone, and it ended in gunfire and a 41-year-old man dead, and it happened on an MTA bus. Surveillance video shows passengers running off that bus moments after gunshots rang out, including at least one rider with a baby stroller. According to police, the victim told the suspect to keep it down. An argument ensued, and then the gunman shot the victim in his abdomen on a BX-36 bus. It happened yesterday around 2:30 in the afternoon at White Plains Road and East Tremont Avenue. The suspect then fled on foot southbound on White Plains Road. He's described as a young man, possibly a teenager, wearing a white shirt at the time. The victim, identified by police as Jonathan Pettigrew, was rushed to Jacoby Hospital, where he later died.
Notice anything? Let me play it for you again. And notice how they described the suspect, or more importantly, notice what they omitted in describing the suspect. Play it again.
It started with an argument about someone yelling too loudly on his phone, and it ended in gunfire and a 41-year-old man dead, and it happened on an MTA bus. Surveillance video shows passengers running off that bus moments after gunshots rang out, including at least one rider with a baby stroller. According to police, the victim told the suspect to keep it down. An argument ensued, and then the gunman shot the victim in his abdomen on a BX-36 bus. It happened yesterday around 2:30 in the afternoon at White Plains Road and East Tremont Avenue. The suspect then fled on foot southbound on White Plains Road. He's described as a young man, possibly a teenager, wearing a white shirt at the time. The victim, identified by police as Jonathan Pettigrew, was rushed to Jacoby Hospital, where he later died.
Young man, possibly a teenager, wearing a white shirt, but no mention of his race. Really? Pourquoi? I have no idea what race the suspect is, but how do you describe he has a gun, white shirt, there are a number of witnesses, plural, and you don't mention the suspect? Don't mention his race? Still at large? One more thing about kicking certain people off juries. One of the O.J. jurors is a woman named Carrie Bess. Years later, in a documentary, she's interviewed about why she reached the verdict she reached. Here's what she said. I'm 52.
Do you think that they're members of the jury that voted to acquit O.J. because of Rodney King?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
How many of you think felt that way?
Oh, probably 90% of us.
90%? Did you feel that way?
Yes.
That was payback?
Uh-huh.
You think that's right?
Payback for Rodney King. You think that's right? Hey, it is what it is. Now, would you want somebody like that on the jury? You're a prosecutor trying to get a conviction because you believe somebody committed a crime, hurt somebody, and there's a juror who couldn't care less about the law, couldn't care less about the facts, couldn't care less about the evidence. You're going to cut him loose because of something that happened to somebody else at another time? Are you kidding me? And Jasmine Crockett is a lawyer, an officer of the court. President Trump said the only reason that Steve Hilton became a top finisher is because the heat was on them. Number 38.
It's voted in favor of that. It's really a shame, and it's so bad for the country. You'd almost think they hate the country because they can't. They're not stupid people. You can't cheat like they did. And look at the election in California as an example. After a week, they determined that the kid who's leading and had all the mojo, all of a sudden he doesn't make the runoff. And then I hit them hard on that, but I started talking about Steve Hilton, who's a fantastic guy. And I saw them say it was going to be 2 weeks before they knew. And I started hitting him. It's going to happen to Steve Hilton, too. It's watch. You got to watch. And they approved Steve Hilton very quickly. They didn't want him. There was too much heat on him. The only reason he got approved, he had all the votes he needed, probably to be first place. But the only reason they approved Steve Hilton, it was going to be 2 weeks. They said it. And then they approved him that night because the heat was on them, because they're cheating dogs. And you can't have a great country when that happens. That's why Los Angeles, that's why that state is in such trouble. It's the most.
Here is what Hilton said, number 19.
Great guy, Steve Hilton. So he's saying there's a conspiracy to rig the vote against you right now. What do you say to that?
Well, I think the most important point, Aaron, is that we're feeling as confident as we ever have been that I'm going to make the top 2. Tom Steyer is just not getting the numbers he needs to catch up with us, and there's a diminishing amount of vote out there for him to make up that ground. And that's the really important point. It means that in November, Californians will be able to choose change from 16 years that have given us these terrible results, the highest cost of living in the country, all those things we've talked about many times. That's the substantive point that matters here, that in November, there'll be a real choice. Do we want more of the same with Javier Becerra, more of the same cost and incompetence and corruption, or do we want to go in a new direction to lower costs, lower taxes, and put California back on track?
So I don't know if you saw this because it just happened, but Congressman Kevin Kiley, he's an independent, but he was until very recently a Republican, as you know, California. He says that the pace of the counting is unacceptable. And I think a lot of very reasonable people agree with that. Come on, California, it's great independence and everybody get to vote in these primaries, but it shouldn't take so long to count. Okay, but then when it comes to these issues of, the president is out there saying that means there's fraud and a conspiracy, Congressman Kiley says no, that there's no evidence of fraud. I wanted to play for you what he just said, Steve.
Mm-hmm. Is there any evidence you are aware of that there is any fraud in the counting of the election in California?
No, I don't think that's particularly a helpful way to characterize it, because the slow counting of ballots, I think, is a problem. So I think California does need to get its act together, but that's not
separately.
The way to characterize it. Yeah.
There's no fraud that you're aware of?
I haven't. No, I mean, I have heard, not at least in relation to counting the votes late.
So I just, in terms of where you stand, are you worried that there's fraud right now, or are you just, frustrated that the count is slow, but that you believe the process is fair?
Yeah, so look, there's so many things wrong with the system. I've been saying all along that we take it very seriously because we don't want to let people down, and we've been very vigilant on it. We're keeping an eye on it. We've got teams standing by, lawyers standing by, and actually it's the same answer that actually I've been giving for a few days now. We've seen nothing that would give us cause to intervene in that way. But more importantly than that, Bill Asaley, the U.S. attorney, who's actually got the full weight, we're just a campaign, he's got the full weight of the Justice Department, and he's there and he's taking a look at it. And I trust that if there is anything that needs to be investigated, that he will make sure it happens. But I think the real point is that this whole system needs to be improved. At the end of last week, I actually offered Gavin Newsom a suggestion for how we could speed things up, because one of the reasons it's so slow is that it's done county by county. There just aren't enough people in the offices doing the counting. One reason for that is because you've got a lot of complexity, because there's a lot of signature verification. One way around that, we can actually vote for, in November in California, voter ID. That would remove the need for all the signature verification. That would really speed things up. So there's a lot of sensible things we could do to avoid this kind of fiasco. And that's really what it is. It's making California look like a laughingstock around the world. None of us want that. So I'm looking for positive, practical changes we can make to the system to speed it up, but also to prevent the opportunity for people to look at what's going on and say, look, there's got to be something fishy.
Yeah, but also I think important is you're saying that you're looking for it if it's there, and you have not seen anything untoward happening, and it's really important for people to hear that.
Meanwhile, California, poverty rate of 17.7%. That's 7 million Californians, well above the national average of 10.6%. Child poverty tripled from 2021 to 2024, from 7.5% to 18.6%. Largest homeless population in 2024 at 187,000 people. Price of a home, California, twice that of the national average. I could go on and on and on and on. The question is, have Californians have enough? What did Victor Davis Hanson say about this? Stick around for that. 888-971-SHGE. I'm Larry Elder. 888-971-SHGE. 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel Eldorado. As you know, I bring in the most insightful, informed, and intelligent experts on my show. And every Wednesday, I bring on an expert in banking and the economy whom I have discovered. His name is Alex Epkarian, former banker, current economist, and founder of Allegiance Gold. You know, protecting your portfolio with gold and silver, that's something I thought a lot about. I got to tell you, I've rarely come across a company as impressive as Allegiance Gold. Been to their offices, met their team, and I've experienced the integrity and the philosophy of the people there. That's what made me a client. My friend Alex, welcome back to the show. A lot of questions.
Thanks for having me, Larry. Good to see you.
We spent some time together on Sunday at the Wealth Summit. You were amazing.
Thank you.
You weren't wearing socks, though. I'm not quite sure what that was all about.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that it was my socks are like the value of the dollar as of late. It used to be up my knees, and then slowly but surely started to shrink, and now it doesn't even hit my knees, my ankles.
So like the dollar, your socks are shrinking in value. Now, it looks like, Alex, the war against Iran might very well get cooked back up. President Trump says his patience is wearing thin. He believes that they are just dragging out negotiations. NASDAQ and gold down recently. Gold hit 5,600 back in January. Now it's like 4,150. Is the gold run over? Is gold consolidating, correcting, or something else going on?
Look, I think gold is consolidating, and correction is not a crisis. There's three main headwinds that's causing this. Number one, the war, as we talked about. There's this inverse relationship. The oil price goes up. Synthetically, the value of the dollar goes up. And as a result, we're seeing a little bit of a retraction on gold. So that's number one. Number two, what we're seeing is the Federal Reserve's interest rate policies. At the beginning of the year, there was going to be 3 rate drops. Right now, it's pricing to potentially have only one. Why? We have job numbers that are better than expected. That's a positive to the economy. But at the same time, we had inflation hotter than expected 3 months in a row, from 3.4 to 3.8 to 4.2. So the challenge is, when will the Fed cut the interest rates? Lower interest rate is very much positive for gold. And last but not least, you had this healthy consolidation. So for people that are looking at the big picture, they're saying, should I buy gold? Is this a falling knife that I can't catch? Look at the most well-versed investor in the world. Ray Dalio typically suggests having 15% allocation in gold. He's not suggesting that when gold is ultimately high, and he's not suggesting that when gold is ultimately low. That's an all-weather type of portfolio. So it's just a matter of time. Once oil prices drop, which we know the world cannot handle for a long period of time, gold prices are expected to go back into their normalcy.
Now, the president has his man now at the Fed, Kevin Warsh, who's promised to cool inflation and cut rates. Can he do that?
Potentially. He's looking at changing how inflation is calculated. Look, I'm a former banker, and we used to buy and sell companies. We used to look at financial statements, and sometimes we would look at what's called a non-recurring, an anomaly type of a scenario. What Kevin Warsh is talking about is that the increase in price of oil is causing the inflation. That is a one-time phenomenon driven by the war. So once that goes away, inflation is expected to be at a normal level. So here's the challenge that the Federal Reserve is facing. Anytime they're questioned whether they want to protect the system or the average people, they're always going to choose the system. So right now, the expectation is that he's going to keep the interest rate as is. Think about it this way. President Trump wanted him in his role to lower interest rates. But when the data doesn't support that, it's like giving the house but taking away the keys. The data is the key. The data is not supporting for a lower interest rate cut, even though we desperately need it. Look, the fundamentals of gold, whatever got gold from 2,600 from January of 2005 to 5,600, they're all in play. As a matter of fact, it just got solidified. So whether the Federal Reserve cuts the rate now or in the near term, do anticipate that will weaken the value of the dollar, and that is a positive for gold.
Now, Alex, you mentioned inflation in May, 4.2%. That's 3 months in a row where inflation is up. For somebody age 50 looking for a retirement account, what does this moment really mean for them?
First, let's understand who benefits from inflation. The rich, because they have a lot of assets, and the government, because it's going to lower the impact of the debt. So imagine 10 years from now, you don't pay attention to inflation, you ignore it. All of a sudden, you're going to realize that the value on paper is buying you less. Think about it this way. This 4.2% alone, if you have $100,000, in this year alone, you're going to lose $4,200 in buying power. Compound that 5 years, 10 years down the line. So when you take a step back and understand history and understand what gold does, the fact that it cannot be printed, the fact that it's a finite assets, and it's a neutral assets. Look, the strongest hand, the strategic investors are not panicking. Central banks are not selling. China is not selling. They're actually accumulating more and more because that is the collateral of their currency. That's how they want to strengthen the reserve of their books. So make no mistakes, folks. You cannot afford just staying in paper. This drop in price of gold, the same thing occurred in 2008. From the peak of March till September, gold dropped about 25-30%. Then all of a sudden it went up 3 times until April of 2011. So for some people that are in their 50s and 60s, the ones that cannot afford to be A, impacted by inflation, and B, impacted by the volatility in the market, they need to have some sort of a asset that's outside of the system, and this is where gold comes into play.
2 minutes left. Now, for those who are interested in investing in gold, I understand that Allegiance Gold has a special offer. You used to call it the Elder offer. I think you changed the name of it. Tell us about it.
It went from Elder's special pricing to Eldorado's to where we made it very simple. If anyone is going to invest $50,000 and more, you're going to qualify for $2,500 in free silver. If you invest $100,000 or more, you will qualify for $5,000 in silver. That's offer number 1. Offer number 2, if you're rolling over an IRA, a 401k, an annuity, TSP, 403b plan, 2 years of the custodial fees up to $500 will be covered. And last but not least, if you're someone who served our nation, whether you're in the police department, fire department, I know a lot of you have been taking advantage of that. First, we salute you. We thank you for the sacrifice. And we want to appreciate you by giving you a silver America the Beautiful 5-ounce that's valued about $350 with any investments that you make with Allegiance Gold.
Eldorados, I trust Alex Epkarian. I'm a client of Allegiance Gold. Call Alex Epkarian at Allegiance Gold 844-790-9191. 844-790-9191. Alex, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Larry.
You got it. I want to get back to California. I had a conversation with a reporter when I was running for governor who said he was moving out of California because he couldn't afford a home. I said, yeah, that's that CEQA regulation. He said, the what? I said, CEQA. California Environmental Quality Act. He'd never heard of it. I said, it heaps hundreds of thousands, sometimes even more, on the cost of building a home, and it stretches it out to make it even more expensive. Had no idea. We're going to talk more about this when we come back. 888-971-SAGE. Do not leave town. 888-971-SAGE. 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel. Coming up, the Democrats are sticking by their man, Graham Plattner, who is their candidate. He won the primary for Senate in Maine. After calling Donald Trump a Nazi and a fascist for 10 years, they've now nominated for Congress a man who, in fact, has a Nazi tattoo on his chest. You cannot make this up. Getting back to California, highest gas prices, of course, in the nation. Electricity prices 87% above the national average. Boatload of regulations. 1.5 million combined federal and state regulations, which adds higher costs to businesses. Time it takes to navigate through the regulatory environment. It hinders entrepreneurial activity. Costs a lot of money to figure out the rules and regulations, all of which adds cost and causes the so-called affordability crisis that the Democrats are always whining about. Here's Victor Davis Hanson, number 49.
California, as we're seeing through the lenses of the Los Angeles mayoral race, is a dysfunctional state. The Democrats talk a lot about democracy dying in darkness. Democracy's dying in California. Now, what do I mean by that? When you look at the LA mayoral race, you start to see a familiar pattern that all of us who live in California have noticed in state assemblies, state senate races, and congressional races. And we saw it on the national scale as well. But in California, what happens is a conservative candidate will take a lead or finish on election day ahead, and then almost with a smirk, the Democratic opponent counts on ballots, mailed-in ballots, that start to appear a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks after the actual election deadline, and they are at ratios of 5 to 1, 10 to 1, 20 to 1. And they show the power of the SEIU and other public employee unions, as well as the California Teachers Association, the big money from the billionaire class of Silicon Valley, etc. And then the Democrat candidate that we thought lost actually wins. And then if you allege that something's wrong, you're called a conspiratorial nut or an election denier. But Spencer Pratt was ahead by 7 points. And Ms. Rahman had already given a concession speech. And now it's a week after the polls closed, and suddenly these troves started appearing all week, in which it wasn't 2 to 1. She was the third candidate when the election day tallies had begun, and we had about 60% of the vote. She was well behind Spencer Pratt and well behind Karen Bass. Suddenly, these ballots started coming in, and they were overwhelmingly for the third candidate, Rahman. And now, as I'm speaking, suddenly Spencer Pratt lost his lead that he had established, and apparently everybody thought had won. It's a familiar pattern. Now, why does this happen? It happens because there is a Democratic monopoly in California. We haven't had a Republican governor in about 15 years. We have no statewide Republican elected officials. There is a supermajority in the state assembly and the state senate. Because the governor appoints Superior Court, Appellate Court, and Supreme Court justices, we haven't had a single conservative justice appointed in 15 years, and most of the conservatives under Arnold Schwarzenegger have now retired. So executive, legislative, judicial, they're all controlled by the left and the Democratic Party. Now, why did that happen? Why did the state of California that was run by Ronald Reagan and George Dugmasian, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Pete Wilson, what happened? Well, the state bureaucracies during the period of Jerry Brown's first term and his second term, and Gray Davis's short term, they began regulating administratively, stopping construction, raising taxes in the legislature with thin majorities, and pretty soon a large number of Californians that were upper middle class, lower middle class said, I can't take this anymore. The schools are bad. We have the most illegal aliens. We have the most foreign-born. We have the most welfare recipients. We have the most homeless. We have the highest sales, highest gas, highest electricity, highest gas taxes.
We'll get back to this in just a second.
Schools
Don't go away. This is Victor Davis Hanson. Now, whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, launching a new project, or just looking for that extra edge, your brain is your most valuable asset. And now there's a way to support it every single day. It's called Think Factor. From the makers of Relief Factor, Think Factor is built to help you stay sharp, nurture your memory, and boost your attention. It unlocks the mental clarity and precision you need to stay ahead of the game, no matter the challenge. I take Think Factor every single morning. It gives me energy, focus, and the ability to push through mentally demanding days. And Think Factor results get better the longer it's taken. So if you're a goal-getter, someone who refuses to settle, Think Factor helps you perform at your best and keep your edge. Your first bottle is just $19.95. Call 800-4RELIEF, 800-4RELIEF, or visit relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com to order Think Factor. 800-4RELIEF, 800-4RELIEF, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Triple 971 SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel. Coming up, the Democrats are standing by Graham Plattner. And let's take a look at the resume of some of the people that criticized Donald Trump for going to the Knicks game, by them talking about Hakeem Jeffries and Spike Lee and Chuck Schumer. But let's get back to Victor Davis Hanson first.
We have the most illegal aliens. We have the most foreign-born. We have the most welfare recipients. We have the most homeless. We have the highest sales, highest gas, highest electricity, highest gas taxes. Schools are rated in the bottom 10. Reason magazine just judged us 49th in roads, et cetera, et cetera. And they left. 12 million. This year, maybe 300,000 to 500,000. These were the conservative party of California, the Republican Party. They're gone. We also, during this period, let in about 10 million people over 40 years who came here illegally. And many of them came from south of the border and were very impoverished. So today, that constituency is heavily reliant on union jobs and public largesse. Half of all births in California are Medi-Cal, and 40% of the population is on public assistance via Medi-Cal. And then we had the Silicon Valley billionaire class that dominates, and the upper professional class that dominate the coastal corridor, and they're not affected by the consequences of their left-wing ideology. Now, how does that? That's why we have a monopoly. That's how it happened. How does it manifest itself in an anti-democratic way? How do you vote in California? You just register to vote. Does it require anything? Well, you have to have some ID. If you don't have a driver's license, and by the way, they give driver's license to illegal aliens. So when they say no illegal aliens are voting, they have a driver's license that allows them to register to vote. And because there's no ID checked when you actually vote, of course thousands of them are voting. Everybody knows that. But more importantly, you don't have to have any sort of legitimate ID. You can have a credit card. You can do almost anything to register. If you're homeless, if somebody comes up to you on the street, and we've got over 100, maybe 80, 100,000 people, you can say, do you have an ID? No. Well, we'll give you an ID number. You don't have any idea? We don't know who you are, but just tell us who you are. And then we will register you. And the same day you will fill out the ballot. Oh, you can't read? You don't know how? You can make a mark, and I will witness it. I can witness 10,000 votes if I want to. Or you can sign your name. If the signature is only 40% correct, it's correct. And in 2024, they only rejected 1% of California mail-in ballots. Then the ballots come in by mail. There's no ID. And we have ballot harvesting. One person can go to a person's house and say, I need to register you to register vote. Here it is. Show me a credit card, show me anything, or I'll give you an ID number. And then here's your ballot. Fill it out. I'll take it, and I'll drop it off at a depository.
Unbelievable. He continues, number 50.
That's why California is screwed up. We have no authentication of anybody. We have no idea how many homeless people are voting. We have no idea how many illegal aliens are voting. We have no idea who is voting, because people mail out a ballot. People in the government mail out a ballot to every registered voter, whether that person's been living at the address or not. So traditionally, everybody who has children that go off to college and then they don't come back, they get that ballot at their home. people who are renting still get ballots at that residence when they move out if they don't tell people. So there's thousands of ballots that are floating around for anybody to take, sign, or just make a happy face mark and send in. And because of that, this Democratic monopoly persists. And they don't listen to the people. In 2014, we passed a water bill, Proposition 1. Over $7 billion to build reservoirs. We were desperate for water, but the bureaucracy didn't want it. The Sierra Club didn't want it. The left didn't want it. The people wanted it. So what did they do? They ignored it. They had $2.3 billion to build reservoirs out of that $7-point-something billion water bill. They didn't build the Sykes Reservoir. They didn't build Los Banos Grandes. They didn't build Temperance Flat. We could have had 7 million acre feet. What did they do with it? Gavin Newsom took $250 million of the people's money designated to build dams, and he blew up 4 of them. And they were valuable on the Klamath River. They served recreation. They created clean hydropower. They helped private owners. They had cabins on the lake, and they were flood control. And they were wonderful investments. He blew them all up. He used money that the people voted to build dams to blow them up. We have passed Proposition 209 years ago, and lately Prop 16, that people said we do not want racial preferences. No racial preferences in hiring, in promotion, in admissions, in any state institution. What did we do? The bureaucracy, the Democratic Party said, okay, calm down, we won't do it. And yet, if you go to CSU campuses, or you go to UC campuses, you go to community college campuses, there are separate graduations by race. They say they're not. They're just theme graduations or auxiliary graduations, but there's nobody out of that particular tribe or ethnic group that goes to those. They are segregated. They're segregated theme houses. There is preferences still in admission. They call it, community service or community activities, but they find ways to use race in hiring and admissions and promotion, and they ignore the will of the people. They've done it for 30 years, and there's no consequences because the judiciary is overwhelmingly left-wing. In fact, it's more left-wing than the legislature. We had redistricting. We passed a law years ago that said that a bipartisan commission of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 independents would redistrict according to population and geography without politics. No sooner had they done that, the Democrats who had the power in the state loved that facade, and they began bringing groups to testify and say, well, you need to consider race and ethnicity, and this group's underserved, and that group's underserved, and da-da-da. And before you knew it, they had redistricted so that although 40% of Republicans vote in national elections in California, for 40% of the electorate vote Republican, we were only getting out of, say, 52 congressional seats in our caucus, we were getting about 10 or 12.
Unbelievable. Now, our founders believed that freedom wasn't just a word, it was a way of life. Freedom to move forward, freedom to pursue what matters most, freedom to live fully. But pain is a way of taking those freedoms away. That's why Relief Factor exists. I've been taking Relief Factor every single day for years. It's a 100% drug-free, research-based supplement designed to help support a healthy inflammatory response, addressing pain at its source, not just covering it up. Over 1 million Americans have tried Relief Factor, and get this, 2/3 go on to order more. So this year, as we celebrate 250 years of freedom, ask yourself a simple question. Are you living with the freedom you deserve? Relief Factor gives you the opportunity to live pain-free and get back to the life you love. To commemorate our country's birth, it'll be just $17.76. $17.76. ReliefFactor.com. ReliefFactor.com. 800-4-RELIEF. 800-4-RELIEF. Triple 8-971-SAG, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We're Salem News Channel. We're going to get to the phones next hour. The Democrats are standing by Graham Plattner, the man who's running for Senate in Maine with the Nazi tattoo on his chest. Also, New Yorkers criticizing Donald Trump included Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and Spike Lee. Let's talk a little bit about the resume of those three gentlemen, shall we? But here's back to Victor Davis Hanson.
Of, say, 52 congressional seats in our caucus, we were getting about 10 or 12. And then we went to 9. As I speak today, the bipartisan, disinterested election commission has so redistricted that we have 7. 13% of our congressional district is Republican. And by the way, the Democrats added that to the original bill. It just said state redistricting for Senate and state assembly seats. They added the congressional seats. Is that enough for the Democrats? No. Even though that Donald Trump got over 38% in the last national election from California voters, 30% of them voted for Trump. And although we only have 13% representation in the Congress, they redistrict again. Gavin Newsom introduced a bill, the Democratic power lobbies funded it, and now we're going to go down to about 5 seats. So they want to get down to 6 or 7%. That's not enough. So you add all of this up, and what is the pattern? The pattern is they created ballot laws, and they said they were legal, and they ensure that Democratic candidates are going to win when you don't have IDs and you have same-day registration, and you don't have to have any ID to get a driver's license that serves as the basis for, and I say no ID, I mean no legitimate ID, which serves as the basis for registration and voting. So if you have the voting, and if you have the judiciary, and you ignore propositions, so when people pass propositions, the bureaucracy and elected officials say, we're still going to discriminate by race, we're just not going to build dams, we're not going to build reservoirs, that's your problem. And no, we're going to have a bipartisan commission, but we'll find a way to help Democratic incumbents, and we'll do it by race as well. Add it all up, California is where democracy died.
According to one study, voters who moved out of California between 20 and 24 were much more likely to be Republican compared to those who did not move, and those moving to California much more likely to be Democrat compared to the population of Democrats in California as a whole. When I was running for governor, I went to Key West when it was all over. All these people were buying me drinks. Hey, I used to live in California. I would have voted for you. I would have voted for you. I said, that's why I lost. All my voters moved out. They're all in Key West. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. Do not leave town. So let's get her teed up!
You want to play what? Say hello to my little friend! What the hell's going on out here?
Ooh, that's a bingo. You can't succeed without teeth.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. Salem News Channel. The Democrats are standing by their man, Graham Plattner, the one with the Nazi tattoo, after calling Donald Trump a Nazi for 10 years. We'll talk about that later on this hour. But I'm going to get back to California. I was approached by a number of people to run for governor in 2021. And I resisted for a long time. Dennis Prager asked me to run. Californians were angry over Gavin Newsom at that French Laundry restaurant in Napa Valley, yucking it up with some of the very people that drafted the mandates he was shoving down the throats of the California residents. He wasn't wearing a mask. He wasn't engaging in social distancing. $12,000 wine tab. And I assure you he was not drinking Mad Dog 2020. And people were angry. They thought of him as being hypocritical. And he was. Also showed you that he didn't really believe in the science he claimed he believed in. And I said to Dennis, Dennis, Californians aren't mad at the taxes. They're not mad at the regulations. They're not mad at the crime. They're not mad at the homelessness. They're not mad at the high cost of living. They're just mad at Gavin Newsom because they feel Gavin Newsom was condescending when he jammed down these COVID regulations. All he's going to do is apologize. He'll say, I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have been hypocritical. He'll throw himself on the mercy of the hearts of the voters, and the anger will go away. And that's exactly what happened. I said to Dennis, if Californians were really fed up with the highest state income tax in the nation, they were really fed up with the highest gas prices in the nation, they're really fed up with the highest electricity prices in the continental U.S., really fed up with the crime, the poverty, the crappy schools, education people are getting in our public schools, K through 12, that would be different, but I don't see it. And more people kept coming to me, and more people that I respect. My pastor, Jack Hibbs. My good friend, Lionel Chetwin, a conservative filmmaker. And a local Republican activist named Jenny Sand. They said, Larry, look, this can really happen. And the polls were showing that the recall might very well pass. So in the kind of last minute, I decided to do it. I got in roughly the same time that Arnold Schwarzenegger did in the recall of 2003, around the same time. The difference is two things. 2003, there were a couple of things that happened. The governor, Gray Davis, raised the car tax. And if you want to get people angry in California, you raise the car tax. And there were rolling brownouts because of the failure of the energy grid. So people were very, very angry. And there was a big factor I've told you about before, and that is there was a big-name Democrat who ran to replace his boss. He was a lieutenant governor. So he was on the replacement ballot. So you had two big people, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Republican, and a guy named Cruz Bustamante, a Democrat. And that caused 50% plus one to at least vote for the recall. So the recall passed then for those reasons. In my case, no big-name Democrat. They went to school on what happened in 2003 and made sure that the big-name Democrat who was making public noises about running, Antonio Villaraigosa, two-term mayor of L.A., was pressured not to run. So there was Elder, who got 49% or so of the vote, which is exactly the same percentage as did Schwarzenegger 2003, same percentage. And I didn't have 100% name recognition, not a movie star. I didn't put in $4 million of my own money as he did. And I did just as well as he did on the replacement side. The second highest finisher in the Schwarzenegger recall election was Cruz Bustamante, who got 32% of the vote. My second highest finisher was none of the above. The third highest name finisher was a YouTube Democrat who got 9%. Nobody even knows his name. So they made sure there wasn't a magnet, a draw to attract people to vote for the recall, and therefore it didn't matter how many votes I got. And by the way, I got 3.5 million, more than the other named 44 or so rivals combined. But this is what they do here in California. And I'm very happy that Steve Hilton has finished number 2, so there will be a choice. But you know who's very happy about it? Javier Becerra, the one who finished number 1, because he did not want to run against another Democrat. It would have cost a lot of money, would have been a lot of bad blood. Gavin Newsom, when he ran for governor the first time, made sure his opponent would be a Republican. His name was John Cox. Ever heard of him? Of course not. And after it was clear that Newsom was going to be the top vote getting for the Democratic side, he ran ads attacking, air quotes, John Cox. By attacking, again, air quotes, meaning he was elevating his name recognition because he wanted him to be the number 2 finisher. So the ads were, John Cox, he's too Republican for California. John Cox, he wants to lower taxes. He wants to do this. He's too Republican. And therefore, all Republicans said, yeah, that's exactly what I want him to do. Encouraging Republicans to vote for him, and they did. And he finished number 2, and then got crushed in the general. And that's what Javier Becerra expects to happen to Steve Hilton. The question really is simple. Have these left-wing voters had enough? Spencer Pratt talked about what he called zombie homeless people who are pooping and urinating. Well, there are 2 types of zombies in California. The zombie homeless people he was referring to, and the zombie California voters who step over the poop and step around the urine and still vote Democrat. And the question is, have they had enough? And you heard Victor Davis Hanson outline what the odds are. Recent departures, 2020 and 2024 California, 5 times as many Republicans have moved out of California than have moved in. 5 times. So the Republican base gets smaller and smaller. Democrat base gets bigger and bigger. Unions control the elections. Liberals are all appointed to all the Superior Court, Appellate Court, Supreme Court positions. The legislatures, supermajorities in the Senate and in the Assembly. There hasn't been a Republican elected statewide in 20 years. Hasn't been a Republican elected mayor of Los Angeles in 30 years. Republicans need not even show up for work, and they can pass whatever brain-dead law they want to and do. They heap a bunch of regulations, which jacks up the cost of living, jacks up the price of fuel, and then what do? They accuse the oil companies of gouging. Or they blame Donald Trump. During the debate between Javier Becerra and the other candidates, what did Javier Becerra refer to Steve Hilton as? He said Trump was his daddy. And that's what they're going to do. Trump has endorsed Steve Hilton. Steve Hilton has embraced the endorsement. And the Democrats will attempt to use that against Steve Hilton. And trust me, virtually every ad will be Steve Hilton to a Republican for California. Javier Becerra, when asked what grade he would give Gavin Newsom in dealing with homelessness, you know what he said during the debate? I almost fell off my chair. Gave him an A. Gave him an A. With a straight face. More homelessness than anywhere else. Population is growing. $30 billion spent on dealing with homelessness. They don't know where the money is. There's been no audit. There's been no study to find out how effective it's been. This is the state of California. And this is what Steve Hilton is going to have to be dealing with. He's articulate. He's smart. He knows what the issues are. He's got very positive things to deal with the crime and the homelessness and the poor education and the poor water retention and the poor fire management. Is anybody going to listen? Will the zombie voters wake up? 888-971-SAGE. I'm Larry Elder. Do not leave town. 888-971-SAGE. 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel. U.S. Central Command says they've begun launching additional self-defense strikes today. Said the strikes are in response to Iran's, quote, unwarranted and continued aggression, end of quote. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, Salem News Channel. Mike is in Valley Village, California. Mike, you're on the Larry Elder Show.
Hi, Larry. First of all, I just want to say, I know Mike's easier to pronounce. This is Mordecai. I don't know if you remember me. We've talked a lot, and I still cherish my 10 things you can't say book that's autographed by you and your mother.
Mordecai, thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it.
What I just wanted to what I originally called about, I told the screener was about was I thought that your previous guy that you spoke to made a mistake saying there were 10 or 12 Republicans when it was only 9. In the meantime, when it came on, I heard the second part of it where he actually clarified that. So I just want to say that the it's not just California, but the blue states have been gerrymandered for 100 years. There are some blue states that have none, which is what California is working desperately on.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact, and Gavin Newsom claiming that this was that this new measure was something to get back because of the horrible thing that Texas was doing was a joke. But I'm planning on putting. I've had my Pratt sign up. I know that's not going to do any good now, so I'm planning to put up a new sign that say "Bass for Mayor: Incompetence over Communism."
Mike, thank you very much for the call. You know, Donald Trump has increased his percentage of vote all 3 elections in California. I think in 2016 he got around 30% of the vote, and in 2020 about 34%. The last time, close to 40%. Yet the number of Republican congresspersons in California will probably get down to about 5. On Iran, President Trump says that millions of barrels have been taken out through the strait at night. Number 35.
This war is over. You know, I can say it now. Something you didn't know. Do you know we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil? Nobody knows it. You know who doesn't know about it? Iran, until right now. We took out the other night 22 ships, late at night with no lights, because they don't have any radar, because we blasted the crap out of it. We took out, that's why oil's $85 a barrel. I mean, you take a look. Remember when I did this, I said, look, the one bad thing will be we hit the best economy we've ever hit. And I said to my people, I had Scott, I had Howard, I had Pete, I had all of them. I had Todd in the room. I said, the one thing we have to do now, we had just hit the highest stock market in history, highest 401ks in history. Everything was going well. And I said, I hate to do this to you guys, but Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon very soon. We have to go and attack. So we hit them with the B-2 bombers, which took a lot of courage. It was totally successful. We buried it, very hard to get. But now we had to make the second move. And I said, you know, the bad part is the stock market will go down by a lot based on predictions of...
Now, regarding a deal with Iran, the president seemed to be very, very anxious to get a deal. I'm not. Whatever deal they have, they're going to violate it. They're going to lie. They're going to cheat. It won't be worth the parchment it's written on. Mark Thiessen, former speechwriter for George W. Bush, feels the same way. Number 28.
And, you know, when you're talking about moderates versus, it's like saying that we killed Hitler and now we've got the really bad Nazis, or now we've got the moderate Nazis. There's no moderate Nazis, and there are no moderate Iranian Islamic radicals. And so you have to finish them militarily. And quite frankly, what's dangerous for the Republican Party going into the midterms is having this muddled situation going into the midterms.
And the shooting down of the Apache helicopter shows you how serious Iran is about the so-called ceasefire. Number 29.
Look, the president has been incredibly patient with the Iranians, and this is how they reward his patience. This has to be a decisive attack. It's not proportionate. I agree. It can't be a pinprick strike, and the goal should not be to bring them back to the table. The president said that if the Iranians killed a single American, that would be resuming combat, and they listened to that, and they just tried to kill some Americans. The message couldn't be clearer. This regime is not interested in cutting a deal. There is no Iranian Delcy Rodriguez with whom to cut a deal. No. The president has tried this. It's not working, and I think he needs to go and finish the job.
Let me say a few things about some of these Democrat politicians in New York criticizing Trump for going to the Knicks game. The game, by the way, that the Knicks lost. Most people predicted they were going to win. They lost. Spike Lee criticized the president for making it all about him. Same guy, Spike Lee, who said, as we talked about yesterday, in an Esquire interview, that he disliked interracial couples. Something like 15 to 20% of all new marriages are interracial in America. He dislikes interracial couples. When he sees them going down the street, he gives them visual daggers. He never apologized for it, never walked it back. He said something to the effect of, well, what I mean by that is there are certain people who marry somebody else just because of their race, as opposed to truly loving the person. But if you really love somebody, I don't have a problem with that. Really? And then you have Chuck Schumer, also criticize it. I've been talking about this for years. When Chuck Schumer was a rising politician running for the state assembly in New York, goes to a meeting in the Flatbush area in Brooklyn. Neighborhood was concerned that there were 2 buildings that had blacks. Blacks weren't causing any problems, but the racist neighbors wanted them out. There's an article called Race to the Top, magazine called American Spectator, written by a guy named Jay Homnick, H-O-M like Mary, N like Nancy, I-C-K. I've interviewed him a number of times over the years. And he said, I'm embarrassed to tell you that my father went to a meeting organized by people in the neighborhood who wanted these blacks out. And a new politician named Chuck Schumer came and said, hey, if you guys elect me to the assembly, here's what I'll do. I'll introduce a measure to rehabilitate, air quotes, these 2 buildings that they're in. They will, of course, have to relocate while the buildings are being renovated, but we'll make them so nice, they'll be co-ops, and so expensive that blacks won't be able to come back to them, and voila, they'll be out of here, no fingerprints. And according to Homnick, Schumer got elected and did just that. He failed to appreciate the ability of the blacks to come up with the money to move back and the desire to move back, and so the plan ultimately failed, but not for want of trying. Hakeem Jeffries also criticized Trump. Longtime association with his anti-Semitic uncle named Leonard Jeffries. Big fan of Louis Farrakhan, anti-Semitic. But here he is blasting away at Donald Trump. Nobody even talks about Hakeem Jeffries' anti-Semitic background, do they? I'm Larry Elder. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder, Salem News Channel, coming to you from the Relief Factor Studios. Don't forget your Relief Factor, 800-4RELIEF, 800 the number 4RELIEF, ReliefFactor.com. That's ReliefFactor.com. Karmelo Anthony's defense team has filed an appeal, and we don't know exactly what they're going to argue, but most people speculate that one of the arguments will be that the jury was all white, had no blacks, and that the black jurors were improperly removed from the panel during jury selection. Also, get this, Mayor Karen Bass's brother lost his home in Malibu to the fire, suing the city of Los Angeles. Claiming that the response to the fire was catastrophic. The city is arguing that its response was fine. So Karen Bass's brother is suing Karen Bass over her response to the fire. Again, you cannot make this up. Eduardo is in Tampa Bay. Eduardo, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, good evening, Larry. Here's
Evening.
two interesting stories you can compare. So I saw this in the Spanish news. The Texas sheriff's rescuing 39 illegals. But in New York, speaking of the Knicks Spurs games, Spur fans, when they were walking out of the stadium, they were beaten up by New York fans. How about that hypocrisy?
They're beaten up by who?
Spur fans were beaten by New York fans.
Oh, I see, yes.
Yeah. Those are the comparison, Texas versus New York.
Yeah, I saw that. Somebody was walking down with a Spurs jersey on and got jumped. let's talk a little bit about Chicago. They may lose the Bears. Now, the governor says, I don't want to use tax dollars to build a stadium, which is fine with me. But a reporter talked about all the wasted tax dollars on illegal aliens, and the governor did not seem to be real happy with that. Number 40.
The House didn't go through the Senate, but as you saw, they ran out of time.
Governor Pritzker, on the topic of funding for the Bears,
yes.
Very good. On the topic of funding for the Chicago Bears to stay in Chicago,
yeah.
You said that you didn't want to spend any taxpayer dollars for the Bears to stay.
I don't want to raise taxes.
Or raise the taxes, but yet you've been more than happy and even proud to spend billions of taxpayer dollars on illegal aliens. We all know that the Bears generate revenue. Illegal aliens,
William?
Please.
Okay.
Illegal
William,
aliens. If I may ask my question,
if
I may ask the question, we know that the Bears generate revenue. Illegal aliens typically are a drain on taxpayer dollars. Do you think that long term, especially when you're running for president of the United States, losing the Chicago Bears will be a bad decision?
William, you've inflated a lot and mistakenly presented the history. You may not recall that it was the governor of Texas, Abbott, who decided to throw people onto buses and ship them across the country, 55,000 of them, to the city of Chicago, to the state of Illinois. We didn't get much help from the federal government to deal with that. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, in a humanitarian crisis, when people are arriving in the middle of winter often, without the proper clothing, certainly without food, without shelter, were we just going to let them starve or freeze and be on the streets? And the answer was no. What we had hoped was that the federal government would assist in this, or that Governor Abbott would stop shipping people across the country to very cold climates. But we did what we needed to do to make sure that they stayed alive and were able to thrive. Many of them found other places to go, which is great. But you've mischaracterized.
But would those taxpayer dollars have been better spent on American citizens?
Together the conversations you had with the Bears.
Speaking of illegal aliens, this is a congresswoman named Summer Lee, Pennsylvania. Says protecting illegal aliens is part of my moral code. Number 46.
Well, I just want to talk to you. You're here fighting for justice for ICE detainees. Can you tell us, many Americans are concerned that members of Congress, including yourself, are fighting harder for, these ICE detainees than actual Americans who are experiencing crime as a result of illegal aliens.
Is there a question?
Why? Why are you doing that?
Oh, because I believe in our Constitution. I think that it's important. I think that most Americans, when they're not indoctrinated by right-wing talking points, recognize that an infringement on our Constitution means that they will also infringe your rights. So what we're actually saying is, and what I'm actually fighting for, is that if ICE can, for instance, profile somebody because of their race or their religion or their accent, or if they can pull people off the streets and infringe upon their constitutional rights, then that means that they can also infringe upon yours. It means that you are not safe as an American because our constitutional fail-safes are failing.
Wow.
So what I actually want to do is to restore
life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Those words weren't written just for history books. They're written for you. But it's hard to pursue happiness when pain is part of everyday life. Relief Factor was created to help people address inflammation, one of the most common causes of ongoing aches and pains from aging, overexertion, and just daily living. It's a 100% drug-free, research-based formula that works through multiple metabolic pathways to support comfort and mobility. No prescription, no masking symptoms, just real relief so you can keep moving forward. My brother Kurt used to take Relief Factor every single day for lower back pain in the morning. As America celebrates 250 years of independence, give yourself a chance to reclaim yours. We're offering a special patriotic price, just $17.76, so you can pursue your happiness of being pain-free. $17.76. ReliefFactor.com. ReliefFactor.com. 800-4-RELIEF. 800, the number 4, relief. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are Salem News Channel. Now, you already know groceries aren't getting any cheaper, so let me help you save money somewhere else. Right now, when you switch to Sage Wireless, I'm paying your first month phone bill. That's right. 100% free with promo code SAGE100. Keep your phone, keep your number, get a new one. even add a second line. You'll get reliable coverage on AT&T's same towers, just at a far more affordable price. And a portion of every bill helps support food for the poor. It's on me. Go to Sage Wireless and use code SAGE100 at checkout. That's sagewireless.com, sagewireless.com, S-A-G-E wireless.com. I'm going to be on the Hannity show tonight at around 6:30 p.m. discussing the Karmelo Anthony case and how somehow race got injected into this case, even though neither the defense nor the prosecution raised race during the trial. Rita is in Omaha, Nebraska. Rita, you're on the Larry Otis Show. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Larry. In California, a Democratic-run state, the homeless are $1 billion is spent on the homeless every year, which is more than the fire department. The homeless are injecting dogs with drugs to find out if there's fentanyl in the drugs before they shoot themselves up. This is something people that love their dogs and animals, I feel, should know.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for pointing that out. Also, Rita, when I was running for governor, I was informed that roughly 80% of all the fires set in Los Angeles are set by homeless people. Either they're trying to keep warm, they're trying to cook their food or whatever, but the majority, overwhelmingly, of the fires in Los Angeles, and I think about half of them in L.A. County, are set by homeless people. Rita, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. You know what Act Blue is? Act Blue is a big Democrat fundraising machine. And there are hearings now on what Act Blue is doing. This is the Judiciary House Chairman, Jim Jordan, number 33.
And we won't keep you here all day, but let me just do one more. Did you weaken your fraud standards to help Democrats?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
She is the Act Blue CEO, number 37.
Your board chairman said Act Blue accepted up to 38 million contributions in 2024 that had the signs of foreign origin. How much fraud is too much fraud?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
How many foreign contributions did Act Blue accept?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
How much money did Act Blue accept from Russia?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Why did your entire legal team quit? Your in-house legal team?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
California Representative Garcia claimed that the hearing is a charade. Jim Jordan wasn't having it. Number 39.
Mr. Garcia in his opening statement said we're here because Republicans are playing politics. Let's be clear. We're here because Act Blue's legal counsel said Ms. Wallace-Jones lied to Congress, willfully and knowingly misled the Congress of the United States. That's why we're here. Oh, by the way, who was the legal counsel, Covington Burling? Who was her counsel? Dana Remus, not some Republican. She was former White House counsel for Joe Biden. That's who said that. That's why we're here. So I just have a couple questions for you, Ms. Wallace-Jones, just a couple. Your board chairman said Act Blue accepted up to 38 million contributions in 2024 that had the signs of foreign origin. How much fraud is too much fraud?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
How many foreign contributions did Act Blue accept?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
How much money did Act Blue accept from Russia?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Why did your entire legal team quit? Your in-house legal team?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Did your legal team quit because of reduced fraud standards?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
I understand. And we won't keep you here all day, but let me just do one more. Did you weaken your fraud standards to help Democrats?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the good work you and your committee are doing. And with that,
quick word on Mr. Plattner. James Carville. Hey, he's got imperfections. Number 30.
But I think Plattner might be just his ideas and the things that his courage and also his imperfections are imperfections that we can all identify with. So
yes, and also I think there's forgiveness because people care more about themselves.
Yeah, anybody could fall asleep and have a Nazi tattoo inked on his chest. And he admitted, Carville did, that if Plattner were Republican, that'd be a whole different story. Number 31.
But what would you say to a Republican who says, James, if there was a Republican combat veteran who had a Nazi tattoo, a Totenkopf tattoo, you wouldn't be so forgiving? What would you say to that?
It's true. I would say you're exactly right.
It's true.
If that person was a 4-time combat veteran, I'd say I'd never vote for him, or maybe it's her now. We have women in combat. But you know, you can't, but I wouldn't vote. I wouldn't vote for, I think the greatest danger we face right now is from Donald Trump.
So he's admitting if Graham Plattner were a Republican, he'd have a different attitude. And then, of course, turned it into Donald Trump. And you know, life moves fast, and staying sharp, focused, and clear-headed isn't always easy. That's why the same company that brings you Relief Factor has developed something new, Think Factor. Think Factor is made to help you think clearer and perform better daily. It's a powerful blend of nutrients that unlock mental clarity and precision, nurture your memory, and boost your attention. With Think Factor, brain power and performance finally meet for lasting daily results. Supercharge your memory and mental sharpness. Your brain is your most valuable asset, powering your creativity, focus, and daily performance. If you're feeling mentally foggy or not recalling things as quickly as you used to, Think Factor could be just what you need to reclaim your competitive edge. I take it every morning. Helps with my focus, helps me remember details, makes me feel more mentally energized. 800-4-RELIEF, 800, the number 4-RELIEF, first bottle, $19.95, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Triple 8-971 SAGE 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder, Salem News Channel again. I'll be on the Hannity Show in about a half hour, so check it out. Shamarko Singleton is a CNN commentator. Here's what he said about the Democrat support for Graham Plattner. Number 24.
You have this guy who's saying he's going to make a speech to make a draw a contrast against himself and Susan Collins. He stands up for women. She does not, because she voted for Brett Kavanaugh. Yet we just had, not more than a week ago, very serious allegations against this very same guy who's now the defender of women. So to me, it seems like maybe a defender of women for my Democratic friends when it's convenient for them. But now that there's a political electoral opportunity to maintain their majority in the Senate, and Graham Plattner could outseat Susan Collins, you know what? It doesn't necessarily matter the 10-plus years of arguments we've made about morals and ethics against Trump and Republicans who've empowered Trump, because we can win a seat. It's very Machiavellian in many ways, and to me, any argument that Democrats have framed against Trump, against Republicans, is now null and void. They have revealed themselves to be nothing but hypocrites, nothing but liars, and I think as we get into the general election, you're going to see the case made by Susan Collins, made by the NRSC, that Democrats are not the people that they said that they are. Look at who they're supporting, the guy with the Nazi tattoo.
No kidding. Here's CNN's Abby Phillip, number 9.
The other piece, though, is it's where we are in our politics right now. And I don't like to live in a double standard. And so I don't know what's going to happen in the main race. I probably think Democrats should have had a different candidate. But I also think America should have a different president.
But shouldn't they speak at this point, Ashley? Shouldn't they speak out? I mean, all over the internet, a bunch of Democratic progressive voices, influencers, and the like are out there not just defending Graham Plattner, but attacking these women, saying
that's okay.
Attacking the New York Times for running the stories, calling them uncorroborated claims. The New York Times is basically campaigning for Collins at this point. Cancel your New York Times subscription. Accusing this woman of not telling the truth because she once worked for the Heritage Foundation.
Yes, but
I think the question I have right now is that, yes, the people of Maine will decide.
Yes.
But the Democratic Party can make a choice.
They can.
And they're not making a choice right now.
They are
They
not.
can make a choice about whether to say this is not appropriate. This guy needs to be out of the race. They could say that.
So Donald Trump is a fascist and a Nazi and a Hitler. But a guy with a Nazi tattoo on his chest is an appropriate candidate for Senate because Donald Trump's got to be stopped. You can't make it up. All right, in about a half hour, I'll be on the Hannity Show. I'll see you all here tomorrow. Make sure you're on time. I will be checking attendance. God bless.
What can I say? Mamba out.
The mic has been dropped. All across America.
That's enough. Put down the mic.
The Larry Elder Show.
Smiling at me. Nothing but blue skies do I see.
When the world is just too much, turn it off and turn on positive, encouraging K-Love.
I'm gonna praise.
World off. K-Love on.
K-Love is sunshine for my soul.
I love K-Love.
Listen now on your radio, online, or on the free K-Love app.
K-Love makes me feel so good.
Positive.